Yesterday, the senator representing Plateau North in the National Assembly, Senator Istifanus Gyang, called on the military task force responsible for providing security in a state to discharge its duty dispassionately. He said the security agencies must provide protection to the endangered communities of Plateau North and ensure that all threats to peace are decisively dealt with. The senator was reacting to the recent spate of deadly clashes that have claimed over 100 lives and rendered thousands homeless in local councils in his senatorial district. He expressed dismay that the attacks were all preceded by widely circulated intelligence on the date, time, and location of the incidents. According to him, we saw prior information, the belated or lack of response by the security agencies has been called to question. Now joining us to explain the root cause of the resurgence of violence in his home state is Senator Istifanus Gyang. He will also give us his perspective on what needs to be done to find a lasting solution to the age-long war of attrition between Plateau indigenes and those they claim are foreigners or settlers in the state. Welcome to the show, Senator. Good to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Well, I just quoted you as someone who has been blaming the security agencies for failing to act on intelligence, credible intelligence, I assume, and that that is what is majorly responsible for the crisis in Plateau State, in Jos North, Jos South, and in Bassa local government, and that is responsible for the frustration of various communities and groups in that state. So what's your take? We'd like to hear from you.
Thank you for having me on this channel this morning. First, let me appreciate the opportunity and to, from the onset, deplore and condemn in very strong terms the killing of citizens, and to say that no Nigerian citizen should be made to suffer or lose his life simply on the basis of his ethnicity or his religion. And taking the situation back to Plateau North, the security and situation that has over time led to bloodshed following attacks and displacement of communities in the constituency. This issue has a history, and it used to be a conflict within Jos. Jos City used to be the epicenter of the disputations and agitations, which were simply an issue of the management of our diversity. And in managing the diversity, particularly and plurality of the setting in Plateau North, I want to say that diversity does not necessarily have to be a liability, and it is indeed not a liability, except where it is mismanaged. And it is the management of that diversity and plurality of the demographics, the setting in Plateau North, that has over time assumed ethno-religious dimensions, leading to polarization and of communities along ethnic and religious divides. And what were the issues initially? It had to do with the settler and indigenship issues that were the initial issues in Jos. And Jos is a city that has accommodated Nigerians, inhabitants across the length and breadth of this nation and even beyond. And the coexistence of the communities was challenged on the basis of the quest of who or ownership of the city. And that ownership issue snowballed into violence. The inability to resolve the issues through dialogue, led to explosion of violence, and the weaponization and violent nature of issues that ordinarily would have been resolved through dialogue is what started the whole issues. And for over time, the issue within JOS was managed to the extent that the citizens came to a realization that you have to respect the rights of citizens to reside in every part of the country that they choose to, in line with our constitution, because there are residency rights that allow every Nigerian citizen to reside in any part of the country that he so chooses. And that right also has an obligation tied to it, that wherever a citizen chooses to reside in any part of the country, he is to, be part of the progress, advancement, and the peace of his host of the community that he has now become a member of, and to adopt that community as his home. And once you have that as your home, you now have to coexist in a way that you will be part of the advancement, part of the progress, part of the peace of your new home. And it is in realization of that the situation in JOS now came under the disputations came to a fore, and of course peace came into the situation as a result of the realization that every citizen should be allowed to reside, and every citizen that comes to reside should respect the host community, their customs, their traditions, and particularly where you have host communities that are ethnic minorities, they have their fears. The fears of such people is less people that come into the communities, change the demographics, and their identities will be lost. So the only way you will preserve the identity of such a people is to still respect their cultures and traditions in such a way that they will not, over time, be lost in the demographics. And as a result of that, the situation changed to the present situation that we are having is the one that has to do not with the issues in Georgetown, but with the rural communities, where herdsmen have now come into a situation where they will...
Senator, well, we need to take a short break.
Yes, please.
But please stay with us. When we return, the conversation will continue. Just stay with us. We'll be right back. Still the Money Show. Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Arise News channel. Our guest is still Senator Istifanus Gyang, representing Plateau North in the National Assembly. Senator Gyang, if you may just continue. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you. I was pointing out the fact that the current challenge and security situation in the constituency and Plateau State has to do with the issue of herdsmen that have been hosted by host communities for ages, and even before the colonial era. And they coexisted very peacefully over time. Of course, you would have issues of encroachment on farmlands, but those issues were resolved through the traditional institutions and community-based structures. But the dimension changed where the herdsmen now want to capitulate and obliterate their host communities through very violent attacks, leading to the sacking of several host communities. Presently in Plateau North, across Riom, Belated to Bassa local government, you have over 80 host community villages that have been sacked through violent attacks that led to killing of the inhabitants, the survivors displaced, and their ancestral homes and lands now come under forceful occupation by the herdsmen. And that's the situation that is currently the major security challenge in the constituency. And there has been attempts to address it, but it is being reinforced by the arrival of, herdsmen that hitherto were not in the communities. And the displaced communities that are under forceful occupation, those that are, the territory is already, of course, over 1/4 of Riom local government is under forceful occupation. The same thing, Biladi, 1/4 is under forceful occupation. And the current issue on Irigwe chiefdom in Bassa local government is to reenact what has happened in Biladi and in Riom. And this is the situation where you have communities have been obliterated and the capitulation is still ongoing. And you have a situation where these communities are in displacement. The IDPs are in the people that were displaced completely. So that is the situation that is in the constituency. And it is the displacement of farmers in their host communities is not limited to Plateau. In Zamfara, that is the same thing that is happening to the host communities. The same thing is happening in Katsina. You are seeing the sacking of farmers from their host communities, and their farmlands and ancestral homes are being taken over. So this takeover bid is what is very worrisome, is what needs to be addressed, so that people can have peace in the constituency, so that as people come into a constituency, you have, if in the exercise of your right of residence, choosing where you should reside, the obligatory and mandatory duty is for you to be part of the peace, the progress and advancement of the community, and not to come to obliterate that community and to capitulate that community and to destroy that community and to take over, the ancestral homes of the community. Indeed, the Constitution our laws are against forceful or compulsory acquisition of property, whether movable or immovable. So we have a situation on our hands that requires effective and efficacious application and enforcement of our laws, so that we can have order, we can have peace, and communities will have a breather like is happening in my constituency.
Well, I have two questions. What would you say was the catalyst for this dark turn a formerly neighborly relationship has taken? And the second question is that you referred earlier to a failure in dialogue leading to the bloodshed. So would you agree with the Chief of Defense Staff, General Irabo, when he prescribed peaceful coexistence, harmonious living between the, divergent factions? That was his prescription for the problem.
I agree fully that I've said two things. The management of diversity. It's important that we acknowledge that as citizens, we have diversity in terms of our ethnicity, in terms of our religion. And we coexist as Nigerians, and in that process of coexistence, disagreements will arise. And as disagreements arise, we have to identify the issues. And once the issues are identified, like I have said, the initial issues were contentions over indigenship settler issues, over ownership of jaws. But that is a concluded matter. That one is no more an issue, because we have come to the realization to respect the rights of every citizen, irrespective of his ethnicity or wherever he comes from, to choose to reside in Jos. And it is for the good of my constituency and of the state capital of Plateau State, for us to have people come settle in Plateau State and in Jos, because that will make for the advancement, for the progress, and for the development of the city. No people can live in isolation. We are in a global community. So we must coexist as citizens. And in the process of coexistence, wherever you come, I have said it, the Constitution makes provision for that right. But it has an obligatory duty that you come and respect the dignity of a people. And you see, when you talk about dignity of a people, when you respect the culture, you respect the tradition, you respect the custom of a people, and you do not come with the intention of trying to now obliterate, trying to now replace these customs and traditions that have been that constitute their identity, their heritage, and ancestry. So the only way that we need to do is for us to accept that when you come to a community, you make that community your home, be part of its progress, be part of its advancement. And that's where I agree with the Chief of Defense Staff, that peaceful coexistence is for our collective good, is for our collective advancement, is for our collective progress. And where we allow sentiments and issues that are no more tenable, to divide us, that is where we will have issues. But very importantly, I want to say that the host communities in the villages have cohabited and coexisted peacefully over time. But this attempt to obliterate, this attempt to capitulate, this attempt to replace and displace and replace, that is where we are having issues. And it is being done in a way very violently, attacking communities, killing, hundreds of people. And that is the situation that is very worrisome. And that is happening in a country where you ought to have law and order. And that's where I said, how can we have a Nigeria and a Nigerian state that has a government whose primary responsibility is to secure the lives of citizens? Because the most paramount of all rights is the right to life. Rights only accrue to the living, not to the dead. So if you cannot secure the lives of citizens, it becomes very worrisome. Particularly when you look at the number of deaths that have been recorded from these very, very violent terror attacks on the communities, host communities in Plateau North. So we have to efficaciously and effectively apply and enforce laws. And the institutions that have been empowered by the Constitution, the governmental institutions, are the security agencies. And that is why I have said over time that we must not allow sentiment to drive the process of law enforcement. Law enforcement has to be sincere, has to be dispassionate, and has to be decisive. Anyone that does evil must be confronted. Anyone that kills a citizen must be confronted with the law. We must not look at the faces of people, read crime and criminality on the basis of ethnicity or religion.
Okay. Senator, you said a lot. We're going to take a quick break now, and I'm going to ask some questions after this quick commercial time. I'll stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. We still have Senator Istifanus Gyang, and he's giving us his perspective on what is happening in Jos. So, two questions. You talked about following the law. It's obvious people can't follow the law. That's why you're having the crisis. Because if there was a curfew in place to safeguard the lives of people and people still died despite the curfew, then it's obvious that people are not following the law. So we're kidding ourselves. It's obvious that a lot of lawlessness is going on in Jos. Secondly, you talked about peace effort. It's obvious that it's not working. We had a commissioner of information come here, and we also had an opposing party for the Rigwe Youth Association was here, and they couldn't seem to agree. In fact, both of them were at loggerheads about a paper. They said they had brought out a paper for peace and they were going to abide by it, but the youth council rep from Rigwe said, I don't believe in that paper because there are threats on my life. They want to kill me. The other people want to kill me. So there is no peace, there is no law. Then what is the case? Because people are dying, and not only in that local government, a couple of other local government, Bass and the likes. So people are dying. So it's like, should I call it a catch-22 situation here? Zero sum. What is really happening? And what's the solution? Because the peace effort's not working. The maintaining law and order, that's obviously not working. Walmi.
Hello.
Yes.
We cannot, as a nation that has a government, has institutions, surrender to lawlessness. We cannot surrender to impunity. We cannot surrender to terrorism. We cannot surrender to insurgency. We are a nation. Nigeria has the capacity to bring under control restiveness and attacks on communities, insurgency, and terrorism. That is why we have a government in place. The Nigerian state, all communities hitherto that were autonomous before the colonial and subsequently independent Nigeria, they had their way of taking care of themselves. They had their own defense mechanisms. But all of that has been surrendered to the Nigerian state now. And that is why the Constitution has placed that primary responsibility of safeguarding the lives of citizens and their property on the government. That is the number one, that is the primary responsibility. So where you come to a situation where lawlessness and impunity becomes the order of the day, it is no other reason than the failure of government to live up to that primary responsibility. There's no any other reason you can adduce to that, outside of that. So where you have a situation where people arm themselves with sophisticated arms, attack other communities, other citizens, and totally obliterate them from their communities and ancestral homes. Not once, not twice, not 1 year, not 2 years, not 3 years, not 5 years, not 10 years, but over 2 decades. And those communities are still in a state of helplessness. Tell me, what will you expect of those? What do you expect of those communities? Their impression of the government, the impression of the state of Nigeria. What do you think of ethnic minorities that are faced with this situation? So it is the fear of the ethnic minorities, particularly in my constituency and across the nation, that when you are faced with this type of situation, you are under existential threat. Your survival is not guaranteed, not as an individual, but whole communities. Whole communities. What do you expect them to do? They have surrendered everything because they are citizens. And there's no any other provision except for us to rely on government and the security agencies to secure these communities and these citizens. And therefore, the case now is government has a responsibility to arrest these terror attacks on these communities and to recover the lands that are under forceful occupation, the ancestral homes, and return these people that are in displacement back to their farms, back to their ancestral homes and lands, so that they can know that they are part of the Nigerian state that takes care of its citizens. This is the situation. that is required of government. And I'm saying this with every sense of modesty and responsibility, because that is the reality in my constituency.
Well, Senator.
And you can see the issues across, let me just say this. You can see the efforts and the measures that have been taken by the Katsina State Governor, by the Zamfara State Governor, because their host communities are being obliterated, being capitulated, and they can't just sit and watch. Now you come to my own state, look at the situation. Look at the situation. Those governors have taken action at least to demonstrate that they can do something about their own situation. The governor of Katsina State,
well,
the
Senator,
governor of Zamfara State,
Senator,
at least they have shown.
Senator,
yes, please.
Yes, you have to keep your responses brief.
Yes, please.
Because we're also managing time at this end.
Thank you.
And so when we stop you, just try to be brief.
Thank you.
Now, very quickly, you've made a lot of points. You've made recommendations. You've talked about the seizure of ancestral land. Are you saying the same thing as the Save the Middle Belt Forum, that what is being faced by the people of Anaguta, Berum, Bakin-Ladi, and Basa is a question of Fulanization, an attempt at Fulanization, because you have not mentioned any name. But the Save the Middle Belt group is saying that, look, Fulanis want to take over our land. All of those measures that you have outlined, are you saying that those settlers, those you refer to as settlers, should leave the territory, whereas they've been there for centuries? Now, you also talked about the fact that this is not a new problem. Every governor of Plateau State has had to deal with this same problem. At a point, a state of emergency was declared in Plateau State. Now, do you think that what is required is state police, so that the governor of Plateau State can have direct control over security?
Thank you very much for bringing us to that point. The current security architecture and the structure of the Nigerian under our federalism, to me, has not effectively addressed the challenges that are the security challenges within the states. And that is why you are seeing the desperation with which actions are being taken by some governors, like I've cited Katsina and Zamfara, as a result of the frustration of the current federal setup that has been unable to address the situation in their states. And given that inability and the failure of the current structure and system to effectively address this, the situation, I totally agree, and I'm an advocate for state police, because that will enable states to take the issue of security much more effectively, because states are investing presently in the security, particularly in the police, the federal police that we have. They are doing a lot of investment. But the command and control is not with the governors. And where the command and control is from is from Abuja, and Abuja cannot address the peculiarities within the states. And the attempt by Abuja to address has not brought about the desired impact and solution. What else are we waiting for? What we need to do, like under the current constitution alteration, I will definitely vote for the provision to enable states to have for the establishment of state police, because that is a better way of empowering governors and the states to take to address the security situation in their states.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Gyang, for joining us on the morning show. And we hope that it shall be well with Plateau State and Nigeria, and particularly Plateau North, the constituency that you represent. Thank you very much indeed.